Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Merrily We Go to Hell is over. I'd rather go merrily to hell with you than alone.
I'm a little drunk. Will you excuse me?
I think everyone here is a little drunk, but I'll excuse you.
Now, loose hands.
Terry, you're impossible. What did you do with the ring?
I ought to be shot. I lost it. Well, merrily we go to hell.
Merrily, you stop this and go to work. Come on.
Merrily We Go to Hell, Andy. This movie, I know this is part of our journalist series that we're doing now, but you might mistake it for a movie about addiction and alcoholism. Really, it's about journalists.
Yeah.
Is that what you got out of it?
That was my note. It's like, journalists are great. There's a reason that we are doing a series about journalists. This is a movie neither of us had seen. You know, it's like saying that Jacob's Ladder fits into our Christmas movies.
That's
it's like,
exactly
yes, there's
what
a journalist in it.
Yes. I would say generously, this movie is journalist adjacent. He's not even...
We do see him in the press room.
We do, but he's not actually a journalist. He's like an opinion columnist, right? He's a clever wordsmith, right? Isn't he just more of an editorialist? He doesn't actually write stories.
He doesn't seem to be tracking anything down. Yeah, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
No, there's no sort of journalistic gumshoe at play in this movie.
I mean, he's a playwright too. He's trying. That's his side. Like, it almost seems like he's a journalist accidentally, because his focus seems to be, I really want to be a playwright, and like even when he's at work, he doesn't seem to be focusing on his work.
That's right. We put this movie in because we wanted to add a little bit of texture to our journalist series, I guess. And as you said, we hadn't seen it. I'm glad I have now seen it. And I wonder if you could tell me, Andy, what I thought of this movie.
I think that you genuinely enjoyed this film, despite the surprise that it likely wasn't what you thought it was going to be.
Fascinating how well you think you know me. I think you probably really liked it because you like to get down in the pre-Hays Code like slop and really roll around in it.
Wow.
You like to just get all up in there. I think you're going to say how excited you are that they actually used the word hell in the title, because there were many years where they couldn't do that. And I think you're going to say, look at all the booze that he drank and infidelity. And there's on-screen infidelity, like straight up partner watching other partner kiss another person. Wow. I think you're going to really like that stuff. I think that's all about you.
That's what I live for.
Live for the filth and the muck. The filth and muck.
That's right. It's where I live, on the corner of Filth Street and Muck Avenue.
Filth and muck.
This film, no, it came out before ratings. This was non-rated, but there's definitely a lot of alcohol, drinking, and infidelity, as you said, and HE double hockey sticks in the title. Let's remember.
Oh, you're cleaning it up already.
Very racy at the time of release.
Outstanding.
Some places wouldn't even publish the name of the movie in the paper. Want to watch this movie and help us out? Well, if you see an Apple or an Amazon link to the movie in our show notes, just click on it. It will take you right to their site. You can rent or buy the movie, and we get a little tiny piece in return. Win-win.
We have got some merch. I don't know what we're going to do for Merrily We Go to Hell. I don't know what the image is that properly goes with this movie.
I think it's two people sitting in a roller coaster, and it's going down, but it never comes back up. But they're smiling, and it just plummets directly into hell. Like we see
into fiery blaze.
Little red
at the bottom.
Satan down at the bottom dancing. Right. And they're like,
everybody will love to wear that. That is something that I think people are going to really dig.
No, it fits the times. It fits the times.
It sure does. Head over to truestory.fm/TNR merch, and you can put our stuff on shirts and stickers and mugs and masks and pillows and more with everything we're coming up with. Get it while you can.
Do you ever listen to the show and say, I wish I could get my 2 cents in there? Well, you can, actually. If you watch the movie, send us a 30-second audio file to reviews@truestory.fm. As soon as you watch the movie, we just might end up showcasing your voice on the show. We do record about 2 weeks before the episode drops, so just make sure you get them to us ahead of time. And, we will hold on to it until the show. So it's, we definitely want you to get it in early.
Oh, we've got reviews for months from now in the queue.
Yes, we do. That's right. Yeah. So just send them over to reviews@truestory.fm.
Do you wonder how you could possibly see what movies we're going to talk about in coming weeks? Well, we do too. Except for we actually have a key to unlock the door to the answer to that very question. You just need to head over to letterboxd.com/thenextreel, and you'll be able to see our Letterboxd HQ page. And there we have lists of all of our watch list. We have lists of all the other movies that we've talked about on the show and our series. And it's all very, very exciting. And all you have to do is take a look at that watch list for this current season, and you'll see all the rest of the movies that we're talking about through the summer.
And I bet that you had on your New Year's resolutions list, I need to support my favorite podcast, The Next Reel. And how do you do that? You join us on our membership platform. It's not Patreon, but it's Patreon adjacent. It's their other platform called Memberful. It's built right into our very own website. Now's the time. It's the New Year's resolution. You just got to go over to the site, and you can join at a month-to-month rate or at an annual rate, and you get all sorts of goodies.
Members get early access to every episode. They also get so many bonus episodes, including our retake episode, where we summarize and discuss the entirety of a series that we've been talking about on the show. We also do our Flick Chart re-rankings, in which you'll discover just how much of a cheater Andy is. All of those bonus episodes go to members and early. It's ridiculous.
We're about to record, even like right after this, our January member bonus episode, which is an opportunity that we have to fill in gaps from past series. And this is going to be when we're jumping back to our James Wong Howe black and white cinematography series. And we're going to be talking about Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House. So that's another exciting episode that members get. So another reason for you to jump on the bandwagon and sign up for that membership.
Head over to truestory.fm/TNR membership to learn more about our membership tiers. The most it'll cost you is $5 a month or $55 a year. When you watched Merrily We Go to Hell, did you think, when is the comedy going to happen?
It's funny. I did, and I think it's because of the title, but I don't know if I ever really knew what the film, whether it was a comedy or not. I just assumed that from the title, Merrily We Go to Hell, it sounds like it's going to be a comedy. And so maybe it's just my misreading it, but it's definitely not something that is designed for a lot of laughs.
No, it's not. And I am right with you. There's something about the title, Merrily We Go to Hell, that seems so stupid funny. Like, it's supposed to be funny. And so I feel like that was a little bit of, root beer in my lemonade, that I was ready for a romp, 1930s romp, and I got something very different. I got essentially A Star Is Born, and I expected something much lighter. This is not a funny comedy, is all I'm saying. But we do get a hefty dose of pre-code fun. Do you want to talk about your favorite thing, the Hays Code?
Oh, the Hays Code. You gotta love these films that came out in this period before the Hays Code really started kind of kicking in and enforcing a lot of policies and rules. This was like around 1934, the Hays Code. I mean, it actually started a few years before, in about 1930, but it really didn't start getting enforced until 34. And it's because, people had complained about some of the stuff that was showing up in films. There was a lot of sexual innuendo, interracial relationships, profanity, drug use, prostitution, promiscuity, infidelity, abortion, violence, homosexuality, all of this stuff that had been going on. And a lot of people found that it was, it was a little too much. There was the Catholic Legion of Decency that was out there, and some other places that just felt enough is enough. Hollywood is just a sin factory, and we need to police it. And so, so the Hays Code, it kicked in. It didn't really start working until, films like this were pushing their limits, and people just said, no, we gotta stop. And that's what really pushed it to become much more strictly enforced a few years after this. And to the point where, having hell in the title wasn't even something that you were allowed to do. And so, and this is something like in the 30s, Warner Brothers crime films, it was totally fine to have the criminal doing all sorts of stuff as long as he got it in the end. And you learned the lesson that crime doesn't pay. That's really what was going on with this. And so when you have a film like this that really kind of revels in the booze and the infidelity and kind of this new modern marriage and everything that you have this relationship doing, which is so interesting to kind of see what they're doing here, as both husband and wife essentially end up kind of having affairs that the other know about, it really just shook things up, and just people weren't ready for it. And so it's nice going back to these pre-code films to just recognize that, there was a time that Hollywood was allowed to be, a little more kind of broad in the types of stories it was telling. And you certainly get that with this film.
You start to think, like, if you watch too many of these, like, just slightly post-code films, you start to think, oh, as a snapshot of history, clearly people were much more pure back in the day, right? I mean, clearly they just had more fun, and it was much more just sort of light, and relationships lasted longer, and nobody had thought. I mean, when she turns around, Sylvia Sidney, and says, if we're going to have a modern marriage, and you want to, having a modern marriage means that, being a modern husband means you have certain privileges. Well, I'm going to take advantage of the privileges of being a modern wife. And she's saying to him, I'm going to start having the affairs that you're having right alongside you. And we're going to stay married because I want to be married to you, but I am going to go see other people. I thought that was incredibly powerful, that scene, because it recognizes the sort of history of humanity of troubled marriages and where these sorts of troubled marriages will take you. And I think the story is such it's loaded with all of these things that make the challenges of relationships real to me in a way that movies that came after it sometimes don't.
I think that there's something there. It is a very interesting depiction of a marriage also in a way that, I think so often you have this idea of infidelity in a film, and the husband's unfaithful and the wife's upset at him, but it's just like, it's a man's world. Sorry, babe, that sort of thing. But, if the woman is unfaithful, it's like, oh, the world's coming to an end, and we're getting divorced and everything's over. And this film didn't do that. It allows both of them to kind of be equally unfaithful, And so to that end, I found it to be kind of refreshing in the sense that this is a story that, it's acknowledging that, in a marriage that they are kind of equals. And I thought that was really interesting. And I don't know if that's because we're looking at a Dorothy Arzner film, or if it came from the book or what, but I found it to be just a fascinating way to kind of approach this story.
Well, I mean, you bring up Dorothy Arzner. We got to talk about Dorothy Arzner. What a fascinating human being Dorothy Arzner was.
Absolutely.
I look at her and I think this is a woman who was born out of time. Do you know what I mean? Like she was pushing some boundaries, not just in, in her filmmaking, but in her identity that felt very much like she would be right at home right now. In just our sort of media culture and identity culture. It was just fascinating learning about her. Have you seen, other Dorothy Arzner films?
No. I thought I had seen, I'm blanking on the name, the film that she did with Katharine Hepburn, Christopher Strong, but I don't think I had actually seen that one. And so, but like that, The Bride Wore Red, Dance Girl Dance, like those are some of the most notable films that she had done. But I mean, she'd been around all through the silent era, mostly as an editor before she really moved into directing, and then just directed all sorts of interesting projects before kind of retiring from the business in the early 40s, because it was, I don't know, not really. I don't know if she just couldn't click, like they weren't clicking or something. It didn't seem to work out. And I know she ended up teaching for quite a long time afterward. But I really felt as I watched this that she was a strong filmmaker telling interesting stories. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about her, but it's definitely somebody that I was like, I need to look at more of the work that she's done. Yeah,
I think so too. This is one I would be open to doing a a little bit more of an extended series on, just because of her import. I mean, she was the only woman working in, directing in Hollywood at the time. And, you can see where she is pushing those sensibilities in this one. I would love to see some of these other sort of more important films. She did end up teaching at UCLA. There's a building named after her there. Like, I feel late to the game around Dorothy Arzner and her work, and it feels like she needs to be better represented in our catalog. That's my take.
Well, and it's frustrating because she is one of those filmmakers that, she was involved in, several dozen projects, and it's hard to track a lot of them down. And that's the thing that I think is most frustrating, is that trying to actually do a further exploration of her stuff doesn't give you many projects to actually jump back in and look at, unless you can track down like film prints and stuff,
I mean, it doesn't have to be all of them, Andy. I mean, we don't have to actually work too hard on it, like just a little bit, just a dash. Okay, so let's talk about the story. We've got our hero, our journalist,
Jerry and Joan,
Jerry Corbett, and we should say, I, Jerry, Take Thee, Joan by Cleo Lucas. That's the story that this was based on.
I just have to say, in the context of titles, like I, Jerry, Take Thee, Joan is just like so weirdly bland, and like, I don't know if I'd ever be able to figure out what that movie was about.
Yeah.
I think Merrily We Go to Hell, while it may imply a little bit more of a comedy, it's such a more fun title.
It's a much more fun title, and at least you know where you're going.
Straight to hell.
Plus, there are way too many commas in it. I think titles with too many commas are problematic.
Oh, how about this for a title? When they released this in the UK, since they couldn't put hell in the title, it was Merrily We Go to blank. It was just an underline section.
Are you kidding me?
No. Merrily We Go to blank.
It's like movie title Mad Libs.
Exactly.
That's great. I need a destination. Merrily We Go to Yonkers. Okay. Well, Jerry Corbett is this Chicago reporter, and he meets young heiress Joan Prentice, who is 18 years his junior. Actually, I should say that's never talked about in the movie, but Sylvia Sidney was 18 years younger than Frederick March.
Yeah, it's like that doesn't play into the story at all.
No, it doesn't play into the story, but so it is, because she looks very young. And I think this was the third movie that they'd done together. Is that possible? Or am I thinking of something different? Maybe they hadn't done anything together. I'm thinking about our next movie. I'm getting all of our details confused. But Sylvia Sidney, Friedrich March, she's the young heiress, Joan Prentice, and we have this, the image that we create with Joan. She looks like a young sophisticate, right? And she is able to handle this conversation on the rooftop at this party, watching him drink. She has all the right language, all the right lines, and they somehow she finds him intriguing, provocative, attractive, dare I say. I don't know how, because he's kind of a sloppy, clumsy drunk, but he does have some good lines.
Right. And she meets him, you didn't say, behind a wall of booze bottles that he's like emptied and set up around him like a little fortress.
And he's like flicking trash at her. Like, where's the romance? I don't see the romance. Plus, he's a close talker. I don't know if you noticed this. He's always leaning in and talking real, real close. And in the post-COVID era, that seems like another code we need to respond to. Close talking is out. Thank God we went to widescreen. We can give characters a little bit more space.
I wonder if that was specifically why too many co-stars. Can we just have a little more space when we talk?
Yeah, exactly. We need 16 by 9 just to give us a few inches. You keep spitting in my face. And so that's how they meet. But then, and this I think is the character nuance, she goes home and we see her relationship with her dad is very much daddy-daughter. She's living in this big mansion, she's parading around, and she gives him a kiss on the cheek, and she says, "Oh, daddy, you know, I met a man and he's going to come to my party this afternoon." And she feels at this point much younger than she does at the big party that we just saw her at the night before. She seems much more like, just a crushing teen on this much older man. And I don't know necessarily that I have a point beyond that. Felt odd to me from her character. It felt like Arzner is pushing at something in Joan.
Well, I don't know, but it's funny that you mentioned that. I've been listening to, I don't know if you have tuned in at all to the Secret Histories of Hollywood podcast.
Mm-hmm.
They're currently doing a fantastic look at Cary Grant and kind of his story. Part of the story is following Barbara Hutton, who in the kind of the 20s was very much, I mean, she's the heir to the Woolworth fortune, and like her dad is Mr. Woolworth. And so she was like an American debutante. She was young, she was rich, and she was called the poor little rich girl because she did all sorts of stuff that she was just completely naive to. Like, she had this huge debutante ball in 1930, right when the Great Depression was going on, and got so much bad press about like what kind of person does this, like, and so she ended up getting married and having these terrible relationships with people who really were just marrying her for her money.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just incredibly naive. And eventually, much later in her life, she will end up meeting Cary Grant, and they will end up getting married. But it was one of these stories. As I was listening to this, like her story was so interesting, and she was this daughter of this big industrialist. And as I was watching this film, I'm like, did they make Prentice here, Joan Prentice, like almost kind of patterned after Barbara Hutton as kind of this daughter of this industrial tycoon?
Yeah.
We as Jerry and Joan initially are talking and he finds out who she is, he's like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of you before." And he brings her over to the side of the balcony, and they look out, and he points to a giant Prentice billboard that's flashing its neon lights at them in the dark. And so, yeah, it's like, yeah, this is that name.
That was a great moment, by the way.
It was.
That was an awesome moment.
It really was. But I was just like, I can't help but think that there's a little bit of them kind of poking at this type of person who is just, they're not really clued into everything else that's going on in the world at the time. And so, I don't think they play with it as much as I thought they could have if that was the direction they were going. But I certainly read some of that. And absolutely, I think in 1932, when people would go to see this in the theater, they would probably think of people like Barbara Hutton as they were watching this character.
Yeah, I think so, and in that way, the film feels culturally relevant, right? Because it's really telling a story, sort of a ripped from the headlines culture section story, and that I can see how that means something, and you could very well translate that story to Paris Hilton. Like, this could be a Paris Hilton story. Didn't she make that movie? Yeah, I like this one better.
What was that? The Hottie and the Naughty?
I wonder if people would. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I wonder how people at that time saw this movie and if it made them say "ew," like me, to the Paris Hilton connection. That's interesting. So anyway, what did you think of their relationship? Did you believe it as they start building into something more than just meeting at a party?
It's one of those film relationships where there's not a lot of opportunity for us to really get a full sense of a relationship growing. We just kind of have to buy into the fact, like any romantic comedy or anything like that these two, they see each other and the sparks are there and they feel that connection, regardless of whether we really have a chance to buy into it or not. And so I feel like it really just kind of played into that. Like, they see each other and kind of instantly have that connection, and we just have to go along with it, because I didn't feel that it was necessarily there otherwise outside of that,
Yeah. Well, and I think it doesn't help in some cases, the way the story was cut, and I'm, to just make time pass. So, and I look at this one, the comedy, sometimes the farcical movies of this kind, I can truck with these relationships better because we're in a heightened sense of the comedy. In the drama, it can look like play acting, and the play acting is not, it's not helped when you have these hard cuts to move through time. Like, for example, okay, he shows up at their big announcement party, right? They have the big announcement party that they're going to get married, and he's passed out in the back of this car. And so his buddy comes up.
He shows up late.
Yeah, he's very late.
Drunk, yes.
His buddy comes in and says, oh, he's at home. And she runs down to the car knowing something's up. And there he is, passed out, dead, unconscious in the back of the car. We have, after that, she runs off, and there's just a very brief scene. And then, goodness, hard cut to the wedding. I feel like there are examples of this kind of pacing that work against the movie. Like, I find I believe their relationship less because they don't give me any sort of development in the relationship. It makes everything feel less grounded, less real, and I struggle with it.
I can't help but agree with you with elements like that, the way that the story is constructed. I like it. I like them as a couple. I think there is something kind of cute about the two of them together, but I never get enough from her to really show so many reasons why she loves him when we generally see him as just a drunk who isn't getting much done. I mean, eventually he is able to kind of write a play, sell a play, make a lot of money, but not right away. And so initially I'm like, I'm struggling seeing what she's attracted to with him, because he isn't depicted as a guy who has that many positive qualities, because he's just drunk all the time. And is it that he's fun? But I just didn't get a sense of that.
Or is it that he's famous? Like in that first scene, like she works hard to set up.
Yeah, she knows his name from the paper.
Yeah, she knows his name. Like, he's already famous. Is she just straight up starstruck, and she's putting aside all of the negatives because she likes being with his name more than just him? Like, is there a case to be made for that? I struggle with it because it still feels empty. I don't think that case was made as thoroughly as it needs to be in the movie. And as such, many of these structural issues I find jarring. And what was the ring thing? What was it that he was holding in his hand? Was that like a keychain? Do you know? So in the wedding, he's forgotten his ring.
Yeah, a corkscrew for
it was a corkscrew.
Bottles. Yeah.
Of course it was. Yeah, I couldn't make it out. You're very astute. You must have a real connection to.
That's what I used at my wedding.
The alcohol. It was very clever, and now that I know that, that's very clever. So it was a corkscrew. He forgot the wedding ring and happened to have a corkscrew, and so he put just the loop of the corkscrew on her finger and had her hold the body of the corkscrew so you couldn't tell. And it, again, played off in a bit of a comedic moment, and she just. There were no repercussions for any of those things. Like, we never got to see how she comes back. I was like, you know what? This is yet another data point in how terrible you are. And all of that leads to the scene I was talking about later when she says, we're going to have a modern marriage. I'm going to have an affair. It makes that, like, as cool of a moment as it is in the movie, it's less impactful because I still don't understand why she likes him. Even at that point, as their relationship is now falling apart. All I'm thinking is, go have some affairs. You deserve better.
I guess, I completely agree with you. I guess for me, I saw what the story was doing as far as how they were telling it. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to go along with the fact that there's a connection there because we're not getting it in the film, and I just have to buy into it. And so, it's one of those things that I think I found myself forgiving more than you did in context of how the story unfolded, because, it very quickly becomes, as we find out, Jerry kind of has this pining draw to this, I don't know, kind of a former girlfriend, maybe, but I also had the sense that, I don't know, there was a period where I'm like, had he actually met her before? I think that they had, or like they had met, but they weren't necessarily dating. Like I was a little unclear because he's got.
You're talking about Adrian. You're talking about Claire.
Yeah,
they did date, right? She was his ex.
Well, yeah, but there was a period in the film where I'm like, had he dated, or was he just like some famous person that he had met and they had kind of talked, and he kind of created in his head this sense that they had a thing. I don't know, but regardless, they end up together, and that's kind of the whole thing. And so I go along with this, but largely I think it was because I really did enjoy this whole idea of this. This modern marriage that they have, and just kind of like how interesting that was in kind of their push to do, or her push to kind of be his equal in kind of collapsing their relationship to a certain extent. It's definitely an interesting story that I hadn't seen before. So I forgive it some of its faults in the relationship because I found them to be an interesting pair.
Yeah, it makes me we just did a show not long ago where we brought up War of the Roses, and it sort of feels like obviously that was a much more broad take on the race to destroy a relationship, but it feels like there is a class of movies where both partners are working hard to take an equal share of the destruction, and that this is an early example of that in film. And the bold part is that it was directed by this woman who was took it as a sign of being unafraid to tell hard stories. And I think part of the reason I struggle with it is I found Frederick March's performance as the constant drunk lacking for me. I felt his alcoholic was a little bit thin, and once we get into the throuple with Claire and Joan and Jerry, when Claire is in the picture and they're playing kissing games, and Joan finally takes initiative and says, we're going to have a modern relationship. I really like Joan and I like Claire so much better than I like Jerry, that I lose, I think, patience with the movie. But all of this leads to the climate, to the very end of the film, and I am eager to hear your take on their rekindled relationship. Do you buy the end of the movie?
Well, it's a rekindled relationship. There's a pregnancy. You're kind of glossing over that Joan is actually pregnant, and she's getting sick a lot, and it turns out she's actually pregnant, and that's part of the draw that kind of leads to this them coming back together as she kind of runs off, and he tries to be sober. Joan's father won't let them come together, and and he comes to the hospital really to kind of find his child, because he's found out that she's had a baby. He goes to the hospital, the baby died, and Joan is about to die and doesn't want to, and Joan's father, who is perpetually the block at this point, saying she doesn't want to see you, but he goes in anyway, and Joan had been asking to see him. And yeah, they get together. He confesses his renewed love for her, and they kiss and come back together. It felt very abrupt to me. That's what I wrote in my notes. I'm like, well, that was an abrupt ending. Weirdly, as I watched the ending, I felt like this all of a sudden, like the Hays Code had come in and somehow found a way to put this ending on it or something. It felt like, I don't know. It felt a little, he needs to repent and they need to get back together. It felt a little false to me, I guess.
I've read some critiques of that final scene, after with the last frame right there, cheek to cheek in bed. And you're absolutely right. The Hays Code is rearing its head. And I struggle with it because they've spent so much time through the course of the movie defining for us how unreliable these two characters are in a relationship. Many of the reviews that I've read have referred to this final sequence as a redemption for these two characters, that they finally come back together and figured out after this long, arduous journey that they they now know how to be together, and that their version of a modern relationship is actually something that they can live with together, and that they will be true to one another. And they've sown all their wild oats, and now this is a sign that through great pain and great adversity comes hope. I don't buy it for an instant, right? These people, he's an alcoholic. And I'm sure that part of that influence is I'm looking at the movie with 2022 eyes, but I can't help but see how dated that final redemption, quote unquote, is, because he is an unreliable participant in this relationship. She's fawning over this guy. He is an alcoholic. There is no way it will work for them. There's no sign that they are the people that they need each other to be at this point.
But here's a spin on what you're saying. Maybe that's what they're actually trying to say. And even with the title, Merrily We Go to Hell, it's this
maybe
reference
this is
that
them in hell.
They're gonna keep coming back together, but they're never going to be able to actually get over these things. And they're going to keep coming together because they are the type of people who need each other, but also don't realize that they're always going to keep kind of descending into, further and further issues. And his alcoholism probably will rear its ugly head again. And who knows? And it's they're coming back together, but it's not necessarily happily ever after. And so I think maybe that's why it is such a brief ending, is that there's a little bit of element of that these two, it's not necessarily, the, best way for things to go.
Yeah, I feel like the movie, I enjoyed what the movie represents, I think, more than my experience with the movie. But that doesn't mean I didn't necessarily like the movie. I found it entertaining, and I found it, I like your twist on the ending. I think I like that better maybe than mine. And that feels really believable to her, to the experience of Arzner as a filmmaker. Like if she's pushing boundaries everywhere else, it feels like giving us that little dose of that little tease of peace, knowing full well that the movie is set up for a punchline of grief is a good one.
Yeah, there's something potentially interesting in that.
Yeah. What else do you feel like we missed? Anything else on your hot list?
I mean, we talked about Sylvia Sidney, we talked about Frederick March. I do think they both just have great, especially Sylvia Sidney, just like great screen presence. I found her to be a delight to watch on the screen. Definitely somebody that I haven't seen enough of. Like I think I've seen her in maybe a couple other things, but not a lot. She's one of those people that, she was the grandma in Mars Attacks. So, and she was the old lady in Beetlejuice. So she kind of popped up in those late Tim Burton films, which I think is kind of fun. But one of those people that I would love to see just some more of, because I did find her to be just somebody that you could be drawn to quite easily. Frederick March is definitely one of those actors that I think has a face and has a presence that I enjoy seeing on the screen. I don't know if I had as much a problem with him as the drunk on screen as you did, but I think for me, there was an element of wanting to see maybe a little more from the character, because it's funny, and maybe it's just me comparing him with, his portrayal of the drunk in A Star Is Born, right? 5 years later, we see very much the same character, and part of me is like, I guess maybe we've just watched too much of him as the drunk, and maybe I just want to see him doing some other things too.
Well, and I think the movies that I've seen him in since, after this movie, are movies with him in a much more sort of robust performance writ large, and so I struggle with this one just as it is earlier in his career. He's a younger actor, sort of.
Yeah, I think it's stuff like 7 Days in May, where he's the president.
Yeah.
That sort of character that and the best years of our lives.
Well, I mean, Death of a Salesman. He did Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman in 1951, and it's an exemplary performance. But of course, that was 16 years later, and he was as an older man, a more mature man, a more experienced man, and Willie Loman is not the notable drunk. It's a whole sort of different kind of grief we're dealing with in that character. But that's what I think of in addition now to A Star Is Born. That I think of with Frederick March is that substance that I just don't feel like I have as much in this movie.
There's like some of the big stuff that he's done, like when he did Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or when he did Death Takes a Holiday. Like those are films that I have always heard of, but I still haven't watched. And so I think there are other Frederick March performances out there that I just need to catch. I just need to stop watching him as the drunk and look at some of the other stuff that he's doing, because obviously he can do a lot more.
Okay. Well, I think we also have to point out that we do get a bit character, a cameo, dare I say. Yeah, more than a cameo of the good Cary Grant.
It's not a cameo because he was not well known enough at this point, so you can't call it a cameo. Right. He's really just
it's a cameo for character. Me.
Yeah, he's very much a supporting character. Charlie Baxter, which is kind of a fun Cary. It's a small Cary Grant role, but a fun one. It's nice to see him in these early roles when he was still a studio guy, hoping to get more work and those bigger breaks. But at this point, I mean, this is all in the first year that he was making movies and didn't really get that break until, probably about 5 or 6 years later.
And he was 34 years old in this movie. Like these were his early parts, and he was 34 years old. And look at him 25 years later, and he hasn't changed. He has the Brad Pitt thing. Right. He has the Ant-Man, Paul Rudd thing. I don't think Cary Grant didn't actually age until he stopped acting when he became. Maybe
what Paul Rudd did is actually like maybe there's a Cary Grant, serum
connection
that some of these actors are taking. It's something that they made with his blood that these actors drink, and it keeps them young.
Right. That's possible.
I just went down a weirdly dark and gross road.
Well, and what's weird about it, if you look at Cary Grant later, like in his post-acting years, like in the 70s, the stills of him, he actually was Cary Grant for 60 years and then immediately became Frank Sinatra. Like quite suddenly, he's Frank Sinatra. I dare you not to see Frank Sinatra on his Wikipedia page. I dare you. Anyhow.
That's funny. Very funny. But yeah, so that's I guess kind of largely this film. I mean, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy the film. I didn't love it. I found it to be more kind of an interesting watch than something that I would want to return to. But I enjoyed what they were doing. I enjoyed kind of some of the stuff they were saying, especially at this period in time. So
yeah, me too.
All right. Well, we will be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by Michael Shines, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. How to do at the box office, Andrew?
Oh, 1932, Pete. Best guess on whether any budget information is available for this movie or not.
Oh, I'm sure you found all of it, and because it was in Al Capone's vault.
That's right. I think that's where it still is. There's not much out there, unfortunately. Here is what I could find. I could find nothing regarding the budget. The movie opened June 10th, 1932. This film was apparently one of the more financially successful films of the year, and that's all. That's it. There's just nothing out there. I know. Very frustrating.
Wow.
Yeah.
First movie recording in 2022 really starts you off with a whiff.
Well, I've got to have a few of those.
Sorry about that. Got to have someplace to go from here.
Hey, that's right. It's only going to go up from here.
That's right. All right. Well, again, I liked it. I didn't love it. I'm like you. I didn't get enough of your rolling around in the pre-Hays Code muck that I expected. That sort of fawning, that really exceptional muck banter. The muck banter. But I'm glad to see. I think we're in roughly the same place on this one.
It's a fun film. It's definitely an interesting one to look at. And, I think the thing that I enjoy about it the most is that it introduced me to Dorothy Arzner.
Me too. You're right. That's a huge win for this. Middling movie. Great win for the director. I'm excited. It's good. We've done good. We've done good work here. We've done the Lord's work.
All right. Well, we will be right back for our ratings. But first, here is the trailer for next week's movie, Catherine Bigelow's The Weight of Water.
Based on the #1 best-selling novel.
This is it?
2 women were discovered in the kitchen, strangled and bludgeoned with an axe.
She came to the island to do a story.
I think the killer was in love with one of the women.
So it's an act of passion.
About a murder that happened long ago.
I told my sister to run, but she said she was too tired.
Using an axe requires intimacy. Think about how close you have to be to your victim.
Now, secrets are surfacing.
I was thinking about what keeps people together.
So how did you 2 meet?
Desires are stirring.
When I told her to go and to look for help. Thomas!
What?
She said she could not.
And the truth
How did he know the women would be alone?
isn't the only thing
What's going on?
What's going on with you?
to fear.
Something's gonna happen.
From the director of K-19 Widowmaker and Strange Days, Academy Award nominee Sean Penn, Sarah Polley, Elizabeth Hurley, Catherine McCormack, and Josh Lucas. The Weight of Water.
There are times in your life when you sense that something is about to happen. And at the same time, you realize it already has.
Letterboxd, Pete.
Letterboxd, Andy. How'd this one shake out on your Letterboxd review?
I still liked it. It's a very easy film to watch. It does have a lot of issues as you start kind of digging into it. But I still find it to be certainly an interesting film. So 3 stars and a heart is where I landed with this.
Andy, I'm exactly there. 3 stars and a heart.
Aww.
That's what I did.
Oh,
I wonder if I think that's what I did. Like I did.
Samesies.
Very excited about that. That we are samesies. Yeah, troublesome in parts. Didn't like Frederick March, but there are some other people who really buoy the film.
Yeah.
And Cary Grant's white teeth. So white.
So white. Yeah.
They were as white as the collar on his tuxedo.
So what did you think about Merrily We Go to Hell? We want to know. Hop into the Show Talk channel in our Discord community, where we are going to be talking about this movie this week with all of you.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
There are a lot of reviews. Some of them are funny. Some of them are very serious and long. But one that I stuck with because it hinges on Dorothy Arzner. And as you know, I'm now a fan of Dorothy Arzner. This is a 3.5-star review by Ella from early last year. No, 2 years ago, 2020. Oh, Andy, it's 2022.
Time flies.
Ella says, Arzner has such an understanding of women tortured by their own nature.
Ooh.
Nearly 90 years later, the characters that occupy her films still quietly burrow their way into your heart. I love that. And I think that's a really great way to frame what Sydney is doing in this movie with Prentice.
Yeah, actually.
Tortured by her own nature.
That's actually...
She is.
Yeah, a great perspective on it. I like that quite a bit. And I think to a certain extent it speaks to the end of the film too.
Yeah, I think so too. She can't get off the train, because that's who she is.
Yep. That's it. That's it right there.
What do you got?
Oh, I've got a 3.5 by Ely, who also gave it a heart and had this to say. Imagine your wife telling you she's bringing her side piece to a party and she sews up with Cary Grant. I would just cut my losses at that point, honestly. Yeah, me too.
Done and done. Thanks, Letterboxd. Andy, it's hard to believe we've been having weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals has links to purchase the source material behind our adapted film discussions. Your purchases there help support the show at no extra cost.
For the entirety of season 11, we featured films directed by women.
The only exceptions were some of our member bonus episodes.
We talked about The Lure for our horror debuts series, which is a very loose adaptation of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen.
Definitely miles from the Disney versions.
For our 10-year anniversary series, we covered We Need to Talk About Kevin, taken from the Lionel Shriver novel.
Man, that was brilliant.
And horrifying.
Yeah. The Journalist series included Merrily We Go to Hell and The Weight of Water, adapted from Anita Shreve's bestseller.
We filled some gaps in previous series with member bonus episodes on adaptations like Malcolm X, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, Cactus Flower, Wild at Heart, Life Force, and The Blues Brothers.
Our John Hurt series looked at a trio of adaptations: Chilly Scenes of Winter from the novel by Anne Beatty, Awakenings based on Oliver Sacks' nonfiction book, and Rambling Rose adapted from the Calder Willingham novel.
2 films in our coming-of-age debut series were adapted from books: The Virgin Suicides from Jeffrey Eugenides and The Diary of a Teenage Girl, Phoebe Glockner's graphic novel.
We had Queen of Katwe for our sports series based on Tim Crothers' nonfiction book.
And Clueless kicked off our 90s comedy series, loosely adapted from Jane Austen's Emma.
It totally took place in the 90s, though. Find all of these books and more adaptations on our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today.